What if I told you that for under $20 in seeds, you could cut your grocery bill by roughly 40% for the rest of the year? Not with some elaborate permaculture system, not with a greenhouse, not with land, just seven specific crops planted in April in dirt you probably already have access to. Here's the thing: April is the month, not May, not whenever you get around to it. April. Because three of the crops on this list have a planting window that closes hard once temperatures shift. And if you miss it, you're waiting until next year. That's not pressure. That's just how biology works. I'm not going to tell you this is some crazy new gardening discovery. It's not. Every single crop on this list has been feeding families for hundreds, in some cases thousands of years. The Inca Empire ran on one of them. Indigenous nations across North America built entire civilizations around a combination of three of them. Greek and Roman gardens 2,000 years ago grew at least two of these. The knowledge isn't new. What's new is that most of us lost it. Somewhere between the invention of the supermarket aisle and the rise of year-round imported produce, we stopped understanding what a single packet of seeds could actually do. The reason you've never really thought about it is honestly kind of predictable. A $2.50 packet of seeds that produces 300 pounds of food is not something any industry has an incentive to promote. The US grocery industry generated over $800 billion in revenue last year. Your backyard doesn't factor into that business model, but it factors into yours. Let's get into it. Number one, kale. I know what you're thinking, but set aside every annoying smoothie trend you've ever seen and just look at what this plant actually does. A single kale plant, one plant, can produce harvestable leaves for 6 to 9 months straight. Not 6 to 9 weeks, months. Plant 6 per family member and you've got more greens than you can eat from late spring through the first hard freeze, and in many climates, straight through winter. Here's what most people get wrong about kale. They harvest it like lettuce. They cut the whole head and it's done. That's not how kale works. You take the outer leaves, the lowest ones, and leave the crown intact. The plant keeps pushing new growth from the center. It's called the cut and come again method, and it turns one planting into what amounts to a living salad subscription. Now, let me give you the nutrition numbers because they're genuinely surprising. Per calorie, kale contains more vitamin C than oranges, more calcium than milk, more iron than beef. I'm not saying it replaces those foods. I'm saying that gram for gram, on a caloric basis, it outperforms them in those specific nutrients. That's not marketing. That's USDA nutrient database data. And it handles weather that would kill most garden vegetables. Late frost, wind, heat spikes, even light snow. It just keeps growing. There's a reason it's been cultivated as a staple green for over 2,000 years across Europe. It's not trendy, it's ancient and nearly indestructible. One honest note: kale does attract cabbage moths. If you see little white butterflies hovering around your plants, their larvae will chew holes through every leaf. A simple row cover, basically a lightweight fabric draped over the plants, solves it completely. Costs about $4. Number two, potatoes. If this list has a heavyweight champion, this is it. Because no other crop on earth produces this many calories per square foot with this little effort. One seed potato, that's a small potato or a piece of one, with at least 2 eyes can produce 5 to 10 pounds of food. Let that land for a second. One potato in, 5 to 10 pounds out. Now, here's the number that matters. 40 seed potatoes costs you roughly $12 to $15, depending on variety. 40 seed potatoes, properly planted and spaced, yields somewhere between 200 and 400 pounds of food. Exposed to the same math, a 50-pound bag of potatoes at the grocery store runs about $30 to $40 right now. You do the multiplication on 400 pounds, and the savings are hard to argue with. April is the ideal planting window for USDA zones 3 through 8. Potatoes want cool soil around 45 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and they need about 70 to 120 days, depending on whether you're growing early, mid, or late season varieties. And here's the part I want everyone with a small yard or no yard to hear. You don't need rows of garden beds. The grow bag method works beautifully. A 10-gallon fabric grow bag, about $7 filled with a basic compost and soil mix, will grow a full potato plant on a patio, a balcony, or a driveway. The tire stack method does the same thing for free if you've got a couple of old tires sitting around. You plant at the bottom, and as the stems grow, you stack another tire and add soil. The plant keeps reaching, keeps producing tubers along the buried stem. The Inca Empire cultivated potatoes at altitude in the Andes over 8,000 years ago. They developed freeze-drying techniques to store them for years. You don't need to go that far. A cool, dark space, about 45 to 50 degrees, with decent airflow, keeps harvested potatoes edible for 4 to 6 months, with no processing at all. Number 3. Zucchini. There's an old joke among gardeners. Zucchini is the only vegetable that makes you lock your car doors in August, because if you leave them open, a neighbor will sneak a bag of them into your back seat. That joke exists because zucchini is one of the most aggressively productive plants you can grow. 2 to 3 plants will overwhelm a family of 4. I mean that literally. At peak production, one zucchini plant can push out 6 to 10 pounds of fruit per week. Per week, if you've planted 3, you're looking at potentially 30 pounds of food every 7 days from something that started as a seed the size of your fingernail. Here's the practical approach. Start seeds indoors now in small pots by a sunny window. Transplant outside in about 3 weeks after your last frost date. If you're in a warmer zone where frost is already behind you, direct sow into the ground today. Zucchini doesn't want to wait, and honestly, it doesn't need much encouragement. Full sun, decent water, and room to sprawl. That's the whole formula. Now, the objection I always hear is, what am I going to do with 30 pounds of zucchini a week? Fair question. You shred it. A basic box grater or a food processor turns zucchini into something that freezes beautifully in quart bags. Lay them flat, freeze them, and you've got the base for zucchini bread, soups, stews, pasta sauces, and fritters all winter long. One summer of zucchini, properly processed, fills a freezer shelf that feeds you until April comes back around. Honest note, zucchini has 0 frost tolerance. One cold night kills it. So don't rush transplants outdoors. Check your last frost date and respect it. The other thing is powdery mildew. By late summer, you'll see white powdery patches on the leaves. It's almost inevitable. It slows the plant down but rarely kills it. Good air circulation and watering at the base instead of overhead helps delay it significantly. Number 4. Green beans, specifically bush varieties. This is the crop that gives back more than it takes. Literally, and I mean that in a measurable soil science sense. Green beans are legumes, and legumes form a symbiotic relationship with bacteria in the soil, called rhizobia. These bacteria colonize the root nodules and convert atmospheric nitrogen into a form the plant can use. When the plant is done, that nitrogen stays in the soil. You've just fertilized your garden for next year by growing food this year. That's not a metaphor. It's microbiology. Bush beans are the variety I recommend for anyone starting out because they don't need trellising, they grow about 18 to 20 inches tall, hold themselves up, and produce heavily over a concentrated 3 to 4 week window. Here's the strategy that turns that short window into a season-long harvest. Succession planting. You put a row in now, 2 weeks later, another row, 2 weeks after that, keep doing that through June and you'll have beans coming ripe in rolling waves from early summer through fall. A 25-foot row of bush beans produces roughly 12 to 15 pounds of green beans. Seeds cost about $2 to $3 per packet, and each packet covers 50 to 60 feet of row. The preservation side is straightforward. Blanch for 3 minutes, ice bath, dry, freeze in bags. They hold in the freezer for 8 to 12 months without losing much texture or nutrition. If you're into canning, green beans are one of the easiest pressure canning projects for a beginner. Plant them near your heavy feeders, tomatoes, squash, corn. They'll quietly pump nitrogen into the soil right where your hungriest plants need it most. Number 5, tomatoes. If there's a single crop that forms the backbone of a self-sufficient kitchen, this is the one. Not because tomatoes are the most calorie-dense or the easiest to grow, they're neither. It's because tomatoes are the most versatile preservation crop that exists. You can sun-dry them, you can freeze them whole, you can can them as sauce, crushed, diced, or paste. You can ferment them into salsa. One harvest converts into a dozen different pantry staples that show up in meals every single week for the rest of the year. If you haven't started seeds already, don't worry. Buy transplants. Garden centers have them right now. For preservation purposes, Roma varieties are what you want. They're meatier, have fewer seeds, less water content, and cook down into a thicker sauce with less time on the stove. One well-maintained Roma plant produces 10 to 15 pounds of tomatoes per season. 10 plants gets you 100 to 150 pounds. That's enough to can 40 to 60 quarts of sauce. A quart of organic tomato sauce at the grocery store runs $4 to $6. You can do that math yourself. Here's the build tip that saves you money and frustration. The Florida weave. It's a staking method that uses nothing but wooden stakes and twine. You drive stakes every 4 feet along your tomato row, then weave twine along both sides of the plants as they grow, adding a new level of twine every 8 to 10 inches of growth. No cages, no expensive clip systems. Total cost is maybe $3 in twine, and whatever you spend on stakes, it keeps plants upright, improves airflow, and makes harvesting simple. I want to pause here for a second because there's something about the tomato harvest that I think matters beyond the numbers. When you're standing in a kitchen in late August with boxes of Romas on every counter, the windows fogged from the canning pot, the whole house smelling like garlic and basil and cooked tomato, and you start hearing that quiet metallic pop of jar lids sealing one by one. That sound means shelf-stable food that you grew, you processed, and you put away with your own hands. There's a specific kind of satisfaction in that moment that I genuinely can't describe with a dollar figure. It's just something you have to experience. Number 6, lettuce and salad greens. Every other crop on this list requires patience. This one doesn't. Lettuce is your fast win. Seed to harvest in 30 to 45 days. Some varieties are even faster. Arugula is ready to pick in 21 days, 3 weeks from the moment you press the seed into soil. You're eating from it. That kind of turnaround matters psychologically when you're starting a garden for the first time, because it proves to you immediately that this actually works. The succession planting strategy applies here too. Put in a row every 2 weeks and you'll have continuous fresh salad from now through early fall. The varieties I'd focus on are arugula, spinach, a mesclun mix for bulk. All of them grow happily in containers, raised beds, window boxes, even a 5-gallon bucket with drainage holes drilled in the bottom. If you have zero ground space, you can still grow salad greens. Here's the one thing people get wrong. They plant lettuce, it gets hot, the plants send up tall flower stalks, and suddenly the leaves taste bitter. That's called bolting, and it happens when temperatures push above 80 degrees Fahrenheit consistently. The fix is shade cloth. A 30 to 40% shade cloth draped over your lettuce bed when summer heat arrives extends your harvest by weeks, sometimes a full month. A 6 by 12 foot piece costs about $8 online. That $8 is the difference between salad in June and salad in August. Did you know that a 10 by 4 foot raised bed planted intensively with salad greens can produce the equivalent of roughly $600 worth of retail organic salad mix per year? That number comes from extrapolations of yields published by university agricultural extension programs. It's not guaranteed, but it's in the right ballpark if you manage succession planting well. Number 7, sweet potatoes. I saved this one for last because it might be the most underrated crop in North America. Sweet potatoes are planted as slips, which are small-rooted sprouts grown from a mature sweet potato. You plant those slips in April in zones 7 and above, and what you get back is one of the highest calorie per square foot crops you can grow. We're talking roughly 1,700 calories per pound. A 4 by 8 raised bed can yield 40 to 60 pounds. That's close to 100,000 calories from 32 square feet of soil. The maintenance demands are almost comically low. Sweet potatoes tolerate poor soil. They tolerate heat. They tolerate drought. They're not bothered by most pests. You plant the slips, water them in, and basically leave them alone for 90 to 120 days. The vines spread, cover the ground, and suppress weeds on their own. It's the closest thing to a set it and forget it crop that exists. Here's the part that genuinely surprised me when I first learned it. The leaves are edible. Sweet potato greens are eaten widely across Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean, and nutritionally, they outperform spinach in vitamin A, vitamin C, and protein content. So while the tubers are growing underground, you're harvesting greens from the top of the same plant. The entire organism is food, roots to leaves. Storage is where sweet potatoes really shine for year-round feeding. After harvest, you cure them. That means keeping them in a warm, humid spot around 80 to 85 degrees for about 10 days. This toughens the skin and converts starches to sugars. After curing, they store for 6 months or more at room temperature. No refrigeration, no canning, no freezer space, just a box in a closet. Now, before we close out, I want to leave you with one piece of strategy that ties several of these crops together. It's called the Three Sisters Method, and it was developed by indigenous peoples across North America long before European contact. You plant corn, beans, and squash together in the same mound. The corn grows tall and gives the beans a living trellis to climb. The beans fix nitrogen in the soil, feeding the corn and the squash. The squash spreads its broad leaves across the ground, shading out weeds and holding moisture in the soil, like living mulch. 3 crops, 1 system, each solving a problem for the other. 2. Entire civilizations were sustained on this planting arrangement. The Haudenosaunee, the Cherokee, the Pueblo peoples. It worked for centuries before anyone wrote an agricultural textbook, and it still works today in any backyard with enough sun. If you're enjoying this kind of content and you'd like to see more of it, subscribing genuinely helps. It costs you nothing, and it means more than I can tell you, but that's the last I'll say about it. 7 crops. Let me give you the full picture. Kale for greens from spring through winter. Potatoes for calorie-dense storage food lasting months. Zucchini for prolific summer harvests that freeze into winter meals. Green beans for continuous picking, easy preservation, and soil that's better than how you found it. Tomatoes for a pantry full of sauce, salsa, paste, and dried tomatoes that carry you to next April. Lettuce for fast, fresh food in 30 days or less. Sweet potatoes for a survival-grade calorie crop that stores half a year without electricity. Under $20 in seeds and slips. A single weekend of planting. And a food supply that doesn't depend on a single truck, a single store, or a single supply chain staying intact. I don't know what brought you here. Maybe it's the grocery receipt that hit different last week. Maybe you just moved into a place with a patch of dirt for the first time and you're wondering what to do with it. Maybe you're a parent trying to show your kids that food doesn't originate on a shelf wrapped in plastic. Maybe you've just been watching the world and quietly deciding that depending a little less on systems you can't control sounds like a reasonable thing to do. Doesn't matter, it works either way. 7 crops, 1 month, and the window is open right now. That's it for today. I hope you've learned something you can actually use this weekend, and I'll see you in the next one.